If this video goes anywhere and Hollywood doesn't immediately greenlight a buddy cop film starring Leslie Jones and Maya Rudolph, then you know there's a problem. In the past few years, there's been an increase in calls for diversity in Hollywood. In 2015, the Oscars awarded all 20 acting nominations to white actors, and then did the same thing in 2016, inspiring the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. It should come as no surprise that Hollywood is no different than society in that there's little chunks of racism scattered throughout. This is the same industry that considered Julia Roberts a suitable actress to play Harriet Tubman. But this video isn't about the Oscars or Julia Roberts, it's about comedy. Now, there are certainly people of color working in comedy, but not nearly as many achieve their white counterparts' mainstream success. There is a recent exception, Kevin Hart, who starred in 18 comedies in the last decade. Now, 18 is a pretty high benchmark, so are there other actors who starred in even half of that over the last 10 years? There are, but none of them are black. Which begs the question. There were other prolific black comedians before Richard Pryor, but he set the stage for decades of comics after him to be authentically black, and not just play into the caricature of black people seen in the years before him. You would be hard-pressed to find a famous comedian, black or not, who Pryor hasn't inspired in some way. The argument that Hollywood only allows one black comedy actor at a time has held water for decades, and it starts with Richard Pryor in the 70s. Now, this video was originally a little over 20 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and speed through the next 40 years. I don't think anyone would argue that Eddie Murphy dominated the 80s, being inspired by Pryor albums and deciding to become a comedian at 15 years old. The 90s gets a little more complicated, with black culture crossing into the mainstream and networks like WB and UPN giving a larger platform for black entertainers. All that said, it's arguably between Martin Lawrence and Chris Rock. The 2000s also falls between two comedians, Cat Williams and Dave Chappelle, with the latter arguably achieving more mainstream success with his self-titled show that is arguably the sketch comedy show of my generation. This brings us to who's dominating today. No question that it's Kevin Hart. He got his first starring vehicle in Ride Along and has been leading film after film ever since. Kevin Hart gets a lot of criticism, and I understand why. He's everywhere. But I think Kevin Hart is a talented comic and actor with a relentless work ethic, and I thought he was pretty good in The Upside. Seemed like a bit of a departure from his usual shtick. I'm curious to see what he might bring to the table as he continues to get more experience in the game. So that's my take on who it seems Hollywood has nominated over the years, and I'm not the only person who shares this opinion. During an interview in 2014, BET asked comedy veteran Sinbad, what hasn't changed for blacks in comedy in Hollywood? He said, if you look at it now, what hasn't changed is that they would only pick one black comedian at a time. I don't know what it is with Hollywood. Well, we know what it is, and nothing has changed. Like right now, it's Kevin Hart. So you have Kevin Hart in 9 movies, but that's the only young brother you see. And there are a lot of funny young comics around, but they always find one of us, and that's the one who works. He's not the only one to bring this up. I'll leave a link in the description to a video from Vlad TV where George Wallace, Lavelle Crawford, D. Ray Davis, and Dion Cole all speak on the same trend. But these are just informed opinions. There are facts to back this up too. Now, I don't aim to belittle any of these performers' talent and hard work. I only seek to critique the environment that allows diverse talent and hard work to be overlooked. Additionally, this video leaves off dozens of names that deserve to be in the conversation, so when I don't have anything specific to show you, I'll be giving some of them the spotlight. I looked at all the comedies from 2010 to 2019, a little over 450 films. The data I collected comes from thenumbers.com, a free resource for industry professionals and movie fans to track business information on film. I supplemented this information with the Wikipedia article, List of American Comedy Films. I'll leave links to both in the description below. My criterion for starring is first or second billing. There are a few exceptions. For instance, Zach Galifianakis is third billed in the Hangover movies, but he certainly starred in them. With that out of the way, let's get into the numbers. What you're looking at is a graph depicting all the white actors who starred in comedies from 2010 to 2019. What I'd like you to pay attention to here is the gradual increase. This graph represents a relatively normal distribution of numbers. I'd like you to note Zac Efron right in the middle of the pack, starring in 5 comedies. That number, 5, will come back into play shortly. This graph represents the same, only with the black actors. Firstly, there's about a third less, and most of them don't go above 5. Of additional note is the steep increase from The Rock and Tyler Perry, who have starred in 8 comedy films each, to Kevin Hart, with more comedies than both of them combined. This graph combines both black and white actors. Kevin Hart is at the top of the chart, with subsequent names going sequentially clockwise from there, also displayed on the legend to the right. Now starting from Kevin Hart, you have to go halfway around the chart, passing 16 white actors before getting to the next black actors, The Rock and Tyler Perry. Now not that anyone needs it, but let's do a quick rundown on The Rock and Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry, 6'5", playwright, producer, director, screenwriter, showrunner, studio owner, billionaire, and creator of the immensely successful Madea franchise. The Rock, also 6'5", showrunner, singer, actor, starred in the Mummy franchise, launching his own spin-off, starred in the Fast and Furious franchise, launching his own spin-off, philanthropist with his own day in Vancouver, potential presidential candidate, all this after already being the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, with the youngest WWF championship at the age of 26 with a whopping 17 titles. So impressive that adding NCAA champion seems minuscule compared to his other accomplishments. That's the level you have to be at to come close to half of Kevin Hart's comedy success in Hollywood. After The Rock and Tyler Perry, we're already halfway through the density of this list. The next two black actors are Chris Rock and Marlon Wayans at the 8 o'clock. Chris Rock is a legend in the business, dominating the 90s, and Marlon Wayans arguably the most successful of the comedy dynasty that is the Wayans family. Those are the top 5 in black actors. Essentially, you need to be close to a living legend if you want to crack 5 films in a decade. The same benchmark as Zac Efron, who is undoubtedly talented, but really shouldn't be in the same league as these guys. Now aside from Leslie Jones, these actresses all got their big comedy breaks in Bridesmaids. Yeah, Kristen Wiig starred in MacGruber the year before and was on SNL, but Bridesmaids is arguably what put her on the map. After Bridesmaids, Kristen Wiig, Rose Byrne, and Melissa McCarthy's comedy careers took off. But no starring vehicles for Maya Rudolph. Leslie Jones was heavily featured in the 2016 Ghostbusters film, and it was arguably the best part of it. The year before that, she was featured in Chris Rock's Top 5, with him calling out her performance by name, but Hollywood has taken little stock of her talents either. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, they're both talented actresses who elevate whatever they appear in, but, oh wait, they're black. Oh, my bad, alright. So, no starring roles for them. I get it. Now, I shouldn't have to remind you that this is the same industry that greenlit not 1, not 2, but 3 Amy Schumer comedy vehicles. Seems a little inconsistent. Now, I'm just a guy with a computer. Could I have missed a movie or two, or overlooked a star, messed something up? Yeah, let me stop you. In fact, I almost certainly did, but I don't think it changes my conclusion. Now, there are bound to be critiques regarding my methodology, so I'll respond to some of them directly. For instance, one might argue that black people only make up 12.2% of the population, so they should only show up in 12.2% of the films. But you can't apply that kind of logic to this problem. Not every single American citizen is trying to be an actor, so you can't just paste in those numbers and say, oh, there you go. I googled the funniest comedians of all time, went to the first 5 links listed. Of those links, I looked at the demographics of the top 10 and averaged them all out to find that on average, 44% of the top 10 comedians of all time were black, whereas we only make up 21% of the representation in comedy starring roles, so it's not that black people aren't funny. So then I went on to follow the money. From 2010 to 2019, the top 100 production budgets for comedies only featured 10% of films starring black actors. If you look at the top 100 worldwide grossing comedies, 15% of them are starring black actors. Alright, now admittedly that's not a very significant discrepancy, 10% to 15%. But worldwide gross isn't necessarily the best indicator of comedy films. Some comedy films are only distributed domestically, and comedy usually performs better in America because of translation issues overseas. So, I found that 24% of top grossing domestic comedies were starring black actors, yet we only get top production budgets 10% of the time. So it's not that black people can't pull in money either. There's also a few articles you can check out regarding the disparity in demographics and representation. Vox wrote an article called Gang Member and Thug Roles in Film Are Disproportionately Played by Black Actors. Additionally, the Directors Guild of America produced a feature film inclusion report. The study revealed that feature film director diversity remained low in 2017. I'll leave a link to both articles in the description below. So that's about all I have in terms of evidence supporting my argument, but why does any of this matter? When Dave Chappelle hosted SNL in November of 2020, he said, "I can't tell the truth unless it has a punchline behind it." Our country's been through a lot in the last few years. Most of us aren't reading books, but we are being fed a majority of our beliefs from people with agendas. Even the people in power that I agree with are feeding me lines. We're being told what to think with little regard on how to think. Comedy is one of the few outlets people have that allows them to take a more critical look at some of society's practices. So in conclusion, is Kevin Hart the only black comedian that Hollywood supports right now? While looking at what numerous other comedians in the industry have said, the number of films he stars in compared to every other black comic, those black comics' film representation compared to the white counterparts, yeah, looks that way to me. Now that's nothing against Kevin Hart, don't hate the player, hate the game. In the previously mentioned Vlad TV video, D. Ray Davis notes that this industry wasn't built by us, and he's right. It's not just black people that's marginalized in show business either. On February 5th, FX aired the documentary Framing Britney, which displayed, amongst other things, Justin Timberlake's past treatment of singers Janet Jackson and Britney Spears. He responded to public backlash in an Instagram post on February 12th saying, "I am deeply sorry for the times in my life where my actions contributed to the problem, where I spoke out of turn, or I didn't speak up for what was right. I understand that I fell short in these moments and in many others and benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism. I also feel compelled to respond, in part because everyone involved deserves better, and more importantly because this is a larger conversation that I wholeheartedly want to be a part of and grow from. The industry is flawed. It sets men, especially white men, up for success. It's designed this way. As a man in a privileged position, I have to be vocal about this. Because of my ignorance, I didn't recognize it for all that it was while it was happening in my own life, but I do not want to ever benefit from others being pulled down again." Yeah, sure, it's 20 years late and it required a documentary and public outcry to get that apology, but it shows that people still have a voice that carries some weight. Now, I'd like to say that Hollywood is changing for the better, but it's not. Yeah, if you put a documentary in someone's face, people might take notice, and some change may happen, but that's only changing the symptom, not the cause. Hollywood will probably stay racist and misogynistic until all the bad seeds are weeded out, which may never happen. Now, more diverse names are getting into positions of power, and that's the closest thing to change I think we're going to get. People like Spike Lee, Greta Gerwig, Regina King, Lulu Wang, Tyler Perry, Jordan Peele, Donald Glover, Kathryn Bigelow, and many others. At the 1988 Oscars, Eddie Murphy spoke out about the issues of diversity in Hollywood, stating, "I just feel that we have to be recognized as a people. I want you to know that I'm going to give this award, but black people will not ride the caboose of society, and we will not bring up the rear anymore, and I want you to recognize us." But just because Eddie Murphy was Hollywood's moneymaker at the time, didn't mean he was immune to being torn down just like everyone else, especially when he wasn't putting a punchline with his revelations. Now, it's amazing how consistently these black men have had a scandal with the media labeling them a crackhead or crazy. You don't get into being in these positions they're in without having some sense, but Hollywood just loves tearing black men down. Chappelle said on Inside the Actors Studio, "The worst thing you can call somebody is crazy. It's dismissive. These people are not crazy, they're strong people. Maybe their environment is a little sick." So what do you guys think? I think we need more diversity in our comedy, because I'm tired of only seeing Kevin Hart movies get made, and there's a lot of important voices that deserve a platform. Today, Coming to America comes out, and I'm excited to watch it once I finish editing this video. Dolomite Is My Name was a return to form for Eddie Murphy, so who knows, maybe the 2020s could be his decade. And if not him, then who? Donald Glover? Lakeith Stanfield? Issa Rae? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll leave you with this. If you learned anything in this video, let it be a reminder to pay attention to the world around you. Pay attention and speak up. You have a voice. Use it. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I got a few ideas for videos in the future, but if there's something you want me to look into, or if you don't agree with some of the things I said in this video, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. This is Culture Shock.